welcome back to Pommy and Oz. Hope we're all doing absolutely awesome. Back of the loss by 30 points to the Cats. It's a real journey, isn't it, being a Carlton fan? It is one of them weird things that you just really can't describe, can you? Sometimes it's up and high, sometimes it's down low. But all in all, it's a thoroughly enjoyable ride, especially with you guys and girls. It's the Fans Corner brought to you by quackandcauldron.com.au. Check that out. That is Mrs. Pom's business. Sells really cool little things. Do you know what I mean? You've got like your little gems. Got my necklace here and things like that. So, real good place. Help a local business out. So, thank you to her for helping out with that. And we're at the fans section. My favourite time of the week. I love chatting to you guys and girls. Before we start, let's just go with my initial feelings of the game. It was really men versus boys, wasn't it? You saw the difference in class. We did that wonderful preview with my mate Paolo. Good day to you, my friend. You all enjoyed it, and we said they were the most disciplined side in the AFL, most structurally sound side in the AFL, and they showed it. They showed the difference between us and them, and the biggest thing for me was ability to handle pressure. Do you know what I mean? Geelong average what the AFL consider their pressure gradient, 204 for most of the game. The AFL average is 180. Aside from the second quarter where Carlton were 214, their ability to handle that pressure in that second and third that we brought from them, the 10 oldest players on the paddock being theirs, you really did see what that did. And there was times there in the game where you saw certain things happen which don't happen with Geelong under pressure. The ability to make that tough kick. Doc turned it over a couple of times down half-back, trying to really wean one in. You saw in the forward half, Cripps missed an easy inside 50. A few of the players did. Sad took that intercept. Easy hit-up lead. He missed it. And then in the third, you saw Mackay finally get one out on Sandra Koenig. Spill the mark. It's them little incidentals that comes with age and experience and game management and a real presser furnace. What's interesting about this one, you know I love my stats and it does paint a story, is you look at how we played. Aside from we handballed more than we kicked usually, we were pretty much around our AFL average, bar being 5 inside 50 tackles less, which I think is really interesting. In the first quarter when Carlton came back, all 3 of our last goals were from forward 50 turnovers, forced forward 50 turnovers. We really did show that that's a key component of the game for Carlton. But it's starting to become, I wouldn't say it's a habit, and obviously Geelong are very good, but against these top teams, they take away the space. They make it tough. They make you try and find a different way. And where we have seen this year Carlton adapt, this week they didn't really adapt. There's a few queries, and some of your questions really allow me to answer them queries. But once that pressure gradient went up, Carlton's kicking efficiency was 80% in the first quarter, went down to 60 for the remainder of the game. 13 turnovers resulting in scores, 62 points for Cats from intercepts in their back half versus 23 for Carlton. Does paint the picture. And for me, we're going to cover that. That intercept thing is a key component, is how you beat big sides. Geelong's numbers were phenomenal in that avenue versus Melbourne. And it is a key component. And there is a cog in our system with some of the outs we've got that do fix that. But all in all, it's hard not to be disheartened. And trust me, I'm dying mentally. I'm dying mentally. But we've got to stick fat with it. Do you know what I mean? We've got to stick fat. Because it just shows you the gap between being an 8 side and being a number 1 side. And nothing's changed for me. If they can go out there and learn from it, that's a huge thing. It's a huge thing. And I put my development manager's hat on, pretend I'm at work. When someone who's been going really well and performing really well and they have a couple of blips, and they have a blip, it's how they respond tells me a lot if they've learned anything. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes a humbling lesson is what you need. And it's going to be interesting to see, can they do it? So let's have a look at what you've got in. Let's get around to the questions, my favourite bit. If you are new around here, please drop that like, please drop that subscribe, please. We're well on our way to 3,000, so it'd be awesome if you can do that. I'll give you 5 seconds and I'll do a little dance. Make sure that is hit subscribe. Come on, let's get to 3K. So John Holden, good day to you, my good mate. Just outclassed by a well-oiled machine called Geelong. The top of the ladder for a reason. Cats were on, we were off. So many goals on the counter-attack conceded from our decision-making. It's creeping into our game lately. Is it a leadership thing or a lack of experience in finals like pressure? I think it's the latter. And I think if you look at Collingwood, are a really good example, right? And I hate using them as an example. But when that game was going away from them, Pendlebury hits targets. Crisp hits targets. Maynard hits targets. Their senior figures, when the shit is hitting the fan, hit targets. They do the right thing, and it kind of transcends around the ground. Do you know what I mean? Them little things. And they get really snatchy. And I want you to watch, particularly someone like Sard does this, doesn't follow through. You start to see that dinky chip kick. And to use a golf analogy, you see it quite often in the short game. That's my specialty when I was a coach. Short game. And the best free golf lesson I can give you is when you're chipping, it's an acceleration through the ball. When you're pitching, it's an acceleration through the ball. That's how you generate a spin. That's how you control the ball. You find amateurs and bad players, they kind of cozy it there. You see them, they open up. So that they kind of open up the face like that and they de-accelerate in. They take a big fat chunk out of the ground. It goes short, or they thin it, or they scull it across the back of the green. That's a big thing with Carlton under the pressure, under the cosh. They try and force that movement. And you saw it with the overuse of the handball again under pressure today. When they shorten it up, they're trying to find that extra bit of space. It becomes too overused. They get swarmed, particularly around stoppage and centre clearance. It was woeful. And that is part of just becoming used to it. Because genuinely, you've got to remember as well, and it's not an excuse. I don't want to get into that situation of, oh, well, we've had 11 wins, because you'll never improve if you start saying that that's a good thing. It is a good thing, but it's about building into the next thing, because there's stages in this. There's levels. But they aren't used to that kind of manic pressure, and Geelong had really done their homework. Me and Paolo did that huge thing on how you did it. They blocked that Walshy run. They put someone on Hewitt. Big Mark was on Cripps, and they really stifled that thing. And you see when that gets taken away, that's the point that someone needs to step up and say, you know what? When we have our chances, we take them. And Carlton had their chances. And if you go back and watch that game, the scoreboard flatters us in a way because a lot were kicked out of bounds on the full. Do you know what I mean? We didn't even count as scoring shots, but they were. And it's taking them opportunities. And that will come with maturity. It's okay, but they have lost a game prior to this in St Kilda, where lack of composure, lack of leadership lost them the game. And you've seen St Kilda, they had the day out against us, but Carlton were bad. And that was one of them games where you look at the numbers, they were well off what we've achieved all year. This game, they're around the money. Do you know what I mean? So they're slightly under it in some cases. Your tackles inside 50, yes, they're down. The handballs are a reflection of pressure, but it's how you handle that. And that's something for Voss, and you can't really train pressure. It's one of them things. No matter how good a coach you are, I try to replicate it in training, you know, make someone have a date and make them stay at training. And if they don't complete the training exercise, they're under the shit. But you can never really have real pressure. And that's something that they've got to learn as a group, watch the tape and understand. And it will come. Do you know what I mean? I'm not disheartened. But great questions, you two. Thank you very much for being part of the channel. Next up, is we've got a few of these ones. Changes. SC Gav. Good day to you, my friend. I hope you're doing well. I think we should bring Peter in. Free up JSOS in the half forward role. I totally agree. Hayes out. Lob back in for the rest of the season. We need to work on tackling. Now kicks inside 50. We need to get pressure and energy. Question marks over Newman and Noon's thoughts. Michael McCurry. How you doing, my friend? Outclassed all over the ground. Are a level up and continue to show it. Individual mention to Hayes. He looked good around the ball. Just had filthy disposal. He was another one who really, the pressure got to him. Definitely missed lob, sniper boot. Newman looked in slow motion. Horrible decisions. Who do you move next week? Surely McGovern. Pitter play. Not yet top 4. Who comes in next week? Now, I mean, it's a tough one. Do you know what I mean? It is a tough one. For me, and go back to that intercepts that we were talking about. Top teams don't play a lockdown third. We're playing a lockdown third out of necessity because of Lockie Plowman, right? For me, that can't be done. That can't be done because you can see there 62 points for them from intercepts, an average of 42 all year. Carlton are around 28. They had 26 this week. It's definitely an issue for Carlton because it allows you to be counter-offensive. And Carlton this week, do you know what I mean? When they did get the inside 50s, they were 14 disposals to a scoring shot. Carlton were 25. Do you know what I mean? The inside 50s, there was enough there to score. But you've got to be able to counter. And what they did really well is they used, from 42 inside 50s, they generated 62 points. So you've got to remember, Carlton had 42 inside 50s. They generated 62 points from it. They doubled their rebound 50s in points. Do you know what I mean? You've got to and that is a very good mantra to have. If you can go about, if you can go 1.5 times your rebound 50s, you're winning a lot of games and you're a threat. You're a real threat. For me, if I was picking the team, Lockie Plowman out, Mitch McGovern in. I think you need that intercept. I think Carlton lack someone on half forward. I think you're spot on. So I think PeterV's got to come in for me. So this week, if I was picking the team again, PeterV would come in. Will Hayes would have to drop out, unfortunately. I think Carlton are playing so many wings because of a necessity for rotation. You can bring that one back. And then I think you're going to have to be stiff on someone. Jack Noons. I'd bring Jack Noons out and bring Lockie O'Brien in and play him as a true winger. Jack Noons played more wing this week. Stocker gives you that rotation. And then you add that extra rotation you see when you've got Lockie O'Brien there, that you can play TDK across half forward. We miss conduits. And I think conduits are so important. And you understand when you watch that game why Jack Martin plays, because he makes that leading pattern off half forward. Go back a couple of weeks when we talked about Lockie O'Brien, Jack Martin in depth. So check that one out. But yeah, they would be my changes. So that was Noons out, O'Brien in, Hayes out, PeterV in, and McGovern in, Plowman out. And I think that is closer to our best 22 because Stocker's really playing that Williams role then. Great questions, guys. Thank you very much. Oh, Tim W asked, tonight is the first time the group would look at the opposition and just acknowledge they were too good. If you were Vossi, how would you keep the spirits up and not revert back to this is too hard, we're not there yet? Good. Sucks that we lost. Can't say I'm not bothered like the other games, lol. Cats were always a tough one. It's kind of expected. Next 2 games against UWS and Crows, we have to win to steal our spot in the 8. And I'm confident we will. We'll beat GWS by 45. Spot on, Anthony, mate. I agree with you. I think we'll be fine. I think we'll bounce back quite hard. Tim, what would I say to this troop? I'd be brutally honest with them. And what I would do is I would go through all them little incrementals, and ask why. So there was a few times that the switch was on, going inside 50. Zach Fisher was open on the switch. Carlton bombed it into the pocket. It got easily stifled, and they started to really target that pocket a lot and got done. I would pause the tape each time and ask why. Ask why. And I wouldn't be horrible. I wouldn't be critical or anything like that. I'd just ask why. And I think you'd be able to answer then. They'd be able to answer to themselves. Why under pressure do they look for them options and not look around? Because I think it's as simple as understanding space, understanding the running patterns you do. And under pressure, it's very, very, very common. And if you have kids And if you have kids, that's a great example, and you put a lot of pressure on them to behave or to do certain things, you find they resort to the learnings and the teachings that you've got out of them. And that's the same with adults. Adults are just big kids. And it's crazy working in development and working in golf for so many years and then working with children because I have them. You see adults are just big kids. So when they're under pressure, when they're stifled, when they're stressed, genuinely resort to type. And it's whatever our native is, and it's a protection thing. So that's what I would do. I would ask them why. And take that a step further and be like, why didn't you go to Fisher? And then I'd be going to Fisher and saying, why weren't you calling for the ball more? What do you need to do? And what do we need to do? And what do you need to do when you've got the ball to look for that? Maybe some triggers, maybe some things of looking round, maybe starting little games in training. Like before I pass, I'm going to look left and right before I make that pass. And definitely in training, call these habits out. So blow the whistle when that kick happens again, stop, and reinforce it and go, look, you've done it again. Have the ball back, play on, kick it the right way, and really reward that positive behaviour. But you can't rest on it. It's about bouncing back. So it would probably be Monday morning. We'll go through the tape for me. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Tuesday, straight onto GWS. Straight onto GWS. And this is what we need to do. And this is how we need to do it. And move on from it. Because they have bad days, and do you know what I mean? They were outclassed by a smart outfit. And the way we get there is by getting on our bike and fucking carrying on the journey. We've fallen off it. The hill's a bit fucking big. Just get back on that bike. Because harder you pedal, eventually you'll get there. Great questions, guys. Big Tom, how you doing, mate? From the get-go, it looked like we weren't prepared for the conditions, causing turnover after turnover, resulting in Geelong score. Several games, I feel like we try and play dry-footing no matter what the conditions, wet, windy, humid. Is that experience or leadership we lack? It was a weird one, wasn't it? Because Carlton really don't like... Carlton like to play in perfect football temperature, don't they? And it is a weird one, and I mentioned it on the watch-along. I don't know if you watched the watch-along and you commented on that, because that was a real good discussion we had. Balmy to me that the boys really do struggle in it. I think, honestly, in my heart of hearts, how they play should be good for wet weather footy. I think they overcomplicate it. I really do think they overcomplicate it, because if they'd gone to their short, shallow ball movement, which has served them well, that wind wouldn't have been a factor. Do you know what I mean? Because genuinely it's short, it's shallow. It's like playing golf in the wind. Hit it low. Do you know what I mean? That is all you've got to do. Hit it low. Just chop through it. And you've got to make do and play with it to your strengths. But then there's also things like slow learning. So you saw Hewitt have that short goal. Straight away learned from it. And he was in the identical position 2 minutes later. Hit it out left, let the wind bring it back in. Harry had 2 shots from the same position, I think it was Harry, and completely fucked it. The wind killed him. And that's called durability of learning. So genuinely you can tell a lot about someone if they do it and you do it again. It's a great exercise with your mate in golf, right? If you play golf with your mate and it's windy, give him a freebie and say, you know what, mate, we'll scratch that one, wind caught it, have another go. Guaranteed 9 out of 10 people don't trust themselves enough to let the wind. And there's a little tail there. If you've got a good technique and you do the right thing, the wind should do the same to my ball and your ball, right? However, the difference is the element of trust in you, because you can read the wind. It's not that hard. You've got to trust it. And I do think that is experience. Do you know what I mean? Experience in key game moments. Because against St Kilda, TDK had that shot, missed it. TDK scored this week. That's a good indication of a player that, you know, is learning under pressure. But then, you know, like, you've got to be able to replicate that, and you've got to be able to do it and learn from it. And that was a game really that if Harry takes that mark, kicks that goal, if Harry snaps that goal, that's a big moment. Do you know what I mean? There's some little incidentals in it. So I agree with you, Tom. I do think it's a bit of... don't think it's experience, because they've played in it and they've played well in the wet before. You've got to remember, under Bolton, I think we had the 4th highest percentage in the wet. So do you know what I mean? 4th highest win percentage in them Bolton years. So they understand the wet. I just think it's believing this system. And I think they're coming from such a low base that suddenly they have a game style where they can beat teams organically, that when you mix the rain into it, you mix the weather, I think subconsciously they play with themselves mentally in their head. They play against themselves and think, oh, fuck, we got to do something different here, boys. I mean, when you don't, because that is the best advice I ever had as a young golfer. Don't matter what the fucking weather is, your game can survive it. So definitely part of game management, mate. Great question, Tom. Great question. So this one was a big un. A big un. Went full pom there. Christian, good day to you. How are you? Feel like we need a layer to our forward line. If Harry and Charlie don't fire, we seem to struggle. How do we solve that? Spot on. Why are our inside 50s so slow and predictable, asked Richard. Why does it appear our small forwards are triple team while the opposition forwards have acres of space lead to? Why does Charlie constantly run under the ball? Harry Mackay, seriously, Pom. His attacking the foot is not enough. Agree, punt is king. And Jordan need more scoring options beside Charles and Harry. Spot on. Our list isn't deep. Some have imagined Carlton won't be as good until Cripps starts repeating his form early in the season. With Cripps, Jordan, I agree with you. I think he needs to slide forward more, and I think Carlton have kind of alleviated that, and I'm not too sure why. You see in the structure of him, he's playing a lot more defined role of extracting the pill, and I would like to see him rest more forward. And whether that's a TDK issue, because since Piternet's down, that has correlated. And maybe Voss and the midfield group have identified that as a key component. Maybe a security blanket, because he does play at the feet of TDK a lot. So I would expect when Pitternet's back. So I think that's true. Punt is king. Harry was woeful today. But although he was woeful, I question the inside 50 entries for him, because Charlie was targeted the most. And the second one is, I question why, against Fremantle, we switched Harry and Charlie regularly on Pearson Co. And it worked because they both got into the game, right? Why we didn't do that this week against Sam? Because two things would have happened, right? Harry was playing at full forward, Charlie was playing at centre-half forward. If you switch them, SDDK stays the same place, because that's where their intercepts genuinely come, that back line of defence. That's where Tom Stewart plays in the pocket genuinely. Sam de Koning plays fullback. And they take their intercepts there. That's how they play. So he may stay on Charlie. Now, Charlie was in form. He may have given him something to worry about. It was a lot harder, I would have said, for Sam de Koning to peel off when Charlie was in that kind of form. So he may have freed Harry up, and he may have got Henry, and I think he would have battered him. I thought that would have been worth doing. I would have personally done it straight at the second quarter when Charlie started to get his eye in. Try and get both of them in, like Fremantle, because when they both have it, it's so difficult. Got to question that as well. I think you've got to question a lot of things. But the second thing that might have happened is Sam de Koning would have gone to centre-half back. Gone higher up the ground and followed him. Right? Harry would have still been ineffective, but that would have freed the back half up. Because unless that entry is in the goal square, Carlton small forwards don't know what front and centre is. They haven't got fucking Scooby for some reason. And that blags my head. That blags my head. Because Corey Durden, after last week's performance, this week, his position sense was non-existent. It's non-existent. And to answer your question, Richard, because they're not from turnover. So you watch Geelong, they get one out because it's a quick turnover in the midfield or in the defensive half. When Carlton do that, Charlie had one running in on his own, one-on-one. It's harder to get your team back. So the midfield in top teams, like Voss talks about team defence, and some Carlton fans are like, oh, fucking hell, this is new. It's been around in the AFL for 20 years. Do you know what I mean? The midfield work hard defensively and offensively. It's just we don't. And now we are. It seems like it's a niche thing, but Voss hasn't reinvented the wheel. It's just playing modern day footy. But that is a big reason why they have space in behind, because when you transition it, think of that midfield line, and the half-back line now is so aggressive. They're here, you go over the back, and suddenly you're there. If you watch me and Paolo's preview, we discussed how being hit on the counter is so dangerous for Carlton. And the problem is we don't have an interceptor down back. We're manufacturing it with Sard and Doc, and it doesn't work. You know what I mean? And it really doesn't work if your key is Wheater in, and you're asking him to do that job. And we'll come on to that later, what I mean. But There's some things that Wheater and Plowman do fucking kills me. And that's the aim, to try and get the intercept. And it's the opposite of how Geelong are very smart at how they have got rid of Tom Stewart through suspension, still managed to find a way to do it. And Christian, to answer your question, I agree with you. I think what was great about Durden's game last week, and people kind of forget about it, I think. Do you know what I mean? As they often do. They kind of forget about his game last week. And it's tough. But this week, old Durden, do you know what I mean? What was it? 0 tackles inside 50? And when your tackles are coming from Charlie Kerner, and that's it. Do you know what I mean? As forwards. Matt Kennedy did one. Cripps did one. Zach Fisher played at half forward for patches. Was used on the wing. Do you know what I mean? That's an issue. That's Bolton Teague's Carlton. Inside 50s. Do you remember when we did it last year and Owens was the only one who was in the top 5 who was actually a forward? That is a glaring issue for Carlton. And Durden has to really pride himself on that, particularly without Owens there. And I think the other dimension is really freeing up JSOS at half forward, freeing up TDK to come in there when Pitt's back. I think that's huge because it gives another layer. And you see every team now rest of ruck. And look what it does. Absolutely causes chaos. But definitely they need to get front of centre. And last week we really saw Corey Durden with the 4 tackles inside 50. 3 of them becoming scoring involvements. To back that up with 0 is shocking. It's shocking. And it becomes too easy. And it becomes too one-dimensional. And the forwards have to lay that pressure. And it's bad when key forwards are out-tackling you. Do you know what I mean? Bad. But that is how I think the layer is. As for depth, I think we've got depth there. It's just not fit. And I think that you will see a different forward line when we have the option to float a TDK and a Cripps again. And I do think that's because of TDK. I think that is a security blanket. As seen a lot last year with the year gone with Tim English, where Bont was always around his feet. And now he's freed up. So I think you'll see that back once Pitt's back. So, good questions, lads. These ones here were very good. Big Tony, we're 6 players short of being a top 4 side. Maybe shocking we have slid down to 7th, says Paul. Need to win our next 2 games. Can't win the flag this year unless we beat the best teams and be good to get Pitt back in McGov. We're definitely missing something. Definitely missing them. Bottom few not good enough. We're more than 1 year away. Have to clean up some dead wood, says Warren. I mean, I think you're being harsh on the role players at the club. Because I think some of the senior players didn't play well this week as well. I would say, though, if you're actually honest, though, and you look at that team there, Pittonet's in the best 22, McGovern is definitely in the best 22, Matty Owens is definitely in the best 22, guaranteed Martin is in the best 22 under Voss, guaranteed. And you watch the lead-ups at half-forward, you'll understand why. Cunningham, reserve judgment. Marchbank, I reserve judgment until he gets fully fit. But again, that third is important. Cunningham maybe on a wing role. Will he get fit, though? He's gone away for surgery. Zach Williams and John Boyd will be fighting for that back pocket as well. So I do think that there's obviously there, the 6 names to come in. So I think Tony's nailed it, really. I think there are the 6 players. Stick fat. Do you know what I mean? I think without getting in to selection policy and trades, Carlton need to get depth players next year that are actually fucking fit. Because at the moment, for every Jack Martin, the replacement is another Jack Martin who's injury prone. Where you look at Melbourne, there was a stat the other day, in the last 3 years, Melbourne's second 22 has missed a total of 16 games in 3 years. So they're second 22. So they're backups that are able, like your Lockie Plowman's. In my opinion, Lockie Plowman wouldn't be in Voss's best 22. And that's a fact, because when Voss had a full-strength team, he was nowhere near the 22. So you need players like Plowman who are always fit to be the 22. The problem is, all of our key defenders, the backups have got history list. Sam Durden has injury list history. Marchbank, the biggest offender on Carlton's list. So in an ideal world, our next 22 wouldn't be Oscar Mcdonald, who has serial back injuries. Wouldn't be Marchbank, who always does a knee. It would be someone that you can guarantee will be fit. And that is where Carlton will really improve, when they've got a bit of depth in that team in that way. But I see you guys' point. Thank you very much for your questions. So let's have a look here. Mark Eunice, good day to you, my friend. Biggest learning from tonight. That is a fucking stellar question. Love it. Mickey D, always making me hungry. You can't train pressure like that. Spot on, mate. You can't. Geelong have done it for 10 plus years. Just getting warmed up. Are we better for that experience? I think it'll pay us back down the track. Spot on. Definitely. And Saras boy, what are we missing? I feel like something. Just can't seem to put together a performance like Geelong did. I think definitely the 60 points on intercept. We don't have an interceptor. We're manufacturing it. And it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. You can't manufacture that. And that is what all the top teams do. All the top teams transition. Right? All the top teams transition. All of them do. And it's because it can turn defence into attack. Because you are defending against top teams. Melbourne came unstuck by them. We did. There's no shame in that. Melbourne will bounce back, I presume, today against Port. Carlton have to bounce back. But they need the cattle for it. And they'll hold themselves in good stead that they can do it. Do you know what I mean? They can do it. The biggest learning for me is exactly what Mick says. It's hard to train, but they'll be better for it. That you've got to be on. You've got to back yourself. You've got to trust your skills in these games. And that's what happened this week. A big thing was trust. They overthought it. They were poor at executing. But when you're going at 80% in the first and going down to 60% for efficiency in the for the rest of the quarters, that shows something's gone up here. And that's all that changed was the pressure went up. And this switched off. Do you know what I mean? This switched off. You've got to run more to get free. You've got to back yourself in. You've got to take them dangerous kicks. You've got to understand that it's tough. And there was times that Carlton played themselves. Them turnovers as well. Okay, them kicks were shit. Because some of them were horrible. JSOS's. Do you know what I mean? Running in, scrubbed it on the ground. Easy hit up. Durden did it as well. They're easy kicks. But look at the options they took as well. They were bad options when Durden, when he massacred that inside 50, had a handball over the top to a fish running in. It's them little things there. That's the big learning. That you can think your way out of the problem. And I think they're overthinking it. And they're thinking more, I reckon, if we could break into their brains, I reckon these players were thinking, oh, fuck, this is hard. God, Geelong are coming. And instead they should have been thinking, fucking hell, that first quarter, we outplayed them. Do you know what I mean? We were better. All we've got to do is play our way. Our way stands up. So I think that's a big learning for me. I think the two big learnings for me are trust yourself. And the second one is we need an interceptor fast. There they are. Cheers, guys. Great questions. Loopy Loo. Here we go. Loopy Loo. Love the name. At least we defended better than last 2 years. We would have been beaten by 100 plus. Spawn, we still haven't been beaten by 100. Still haven't conceded 100. Dom in the den. I think the Cats were good, but that's as good as they get. We were down all over the ground. We can be twice as good as that. I take out from the result. Am I insane? Well, I mean, aside from the efficiency, and like we said, the tackles inside 50, Carlton were bang average as they were all year. But they're two big things. And when you concede 62 points on turnover, doesn't matter how good you are, you're getting bad. You know what I mean? You're getting bad. So I think you can take heart in it. I think exactly like the last question said, I think this will pay us back. They've learnt a lesson and they have to. They know there's a gap in here. And to beat the top four, you've got to be good. Do you know what I mean? Do I take heart from it, Dom? You're probably smarter than me. I don't think you can ever be satisfied in a loss or happy. I'm not that type of person. Now I'm starting to think, how do you improve? But like you say, yeah, perspective, that shows the growth. That would have been a 70, 80, 90 point loss. Do you know what I mean? A year, 2 years ago. But the boys kept it up, and that's okay. What have we got here then? Macy, Plough and Newman and Stocker. That is it from Josh. Jesus. Daggers come out, don't they? Shows where we are, suppose. Newman wasn't his best this week, let's put it that way. My jury's still out with Newman, and I love Newman. I think he's a workhorse and he's industrious. I just think that I don't think Newman was in particularly bad. Like, it's not like I'd drop him for it. I think he's been fairly steady this year. I do think, though, Newman's place is under threat when everyone's fit. I think he is playing the Stocker role, and I'd rather see Stocker based on what I see in VFL than Newman, because I think there is just some upside to him. I'm not a big fan of playing 3 halfbacks, to be honest, but Newman was down this week, but he has been very good this year, to be fair. So I'll allow one bad game. And as for Plowman, I don't understand the Plowman hate, because there is literally no one on the list that can play the third. Do you know what I mean? There is no one on the list that can play the third. And Sam Durden hasn't set the world alight in the 2 games back as well, even though he's played purely as a key as well. Purely as a key. So he hasn't set that. So he is there kind of just out of necessity. And I guarantee once McGovern passes his fitness test, he won't be in. So he is a squad player. But Plowman is serviceable. Do you know what I mean? But top teams don't play lockdowns. You've got to remember that. Top teams don't play a lockdown in their third. That is an attacking position. And at the moment, Carlton are forced to play that by its makeup of the team. So aside from playing Domaku, and trust me, I love Dom, but he ain't ready, Carlton really have been stymied in that third. People talk about the key position. Plowman is it. My biggest issue with Plowman, and we'll get practical with this, right, is dummy runs. And how many times this week did Plowman fall for a dummy run and end up on Cameron or Hawkins, and poor Wheaterin or Young had to follow Stengel? It happened 7 times, I counted. I went back and watched the tape. 7 times. And it created a huge outnumber down the back. And that is a huge, huge issue. That is a huge issue for Plough. Something that no one ever talks about it as well. People pick up on kicking and disposals. That is the worst thing for your lockdown to do. It's a very, very, very big issue because it causes disaster in the zones. And nowadays in modern day football, you can't play man defence. You'll get battered because you won't be able to score from transition. Man-on-man defence can't. Manning up, you can't do it. Zonal defence is the way to go, but there is a weakness. If your lockdown is loose, kills you. So great questions, boys. I love it. I love it. Blake, good day, mate. Why did we butcher the ball so much? Gave them so much opportunity from a miskicking in. Haynes a standout from that. Mate, spot on. Spot on. Haynes really did suffer from that after the first, didn't he, particularly? They just take away the short options, and the short options require you to move to create the space, and then the guy ahead of you to move, and that gets disjointed, and then you find that they start balling backwards, and the press comes more because all teams play press, particularly Geelong. Their midfield press is probably one of the best in the league, and it comes in close and close and closer, and before you know it, the only thing that's available to you is a long punt in the air under pressure as well, so it just skyrockets about 10 metres in front of you. That's where they are at the follow the ball. It's game over. It's pressure handling, and at times we're good at it. You saw in the first against Eagles, when they brought it, Hewitt stood out, and this week they really took to that Hewitt option. Hewitt seems to be the guy that's good under pressure. Carlton struggles, so it's an interesting one. Great question, Slick, but that is something that they have to learn. That is something that they have to learn. Carlton need to really get that going. And the only way they can learn from it is by doing it regularly. If they keep doing it regularly, they will be fine. That is really all they can do. But definitely they've got to understand top teams are going to take away. They're going to take it away. They are going to take away that kind of avenue for you. So Carlton definitely have to look at that. But it will come. It will come, Slick. But that is what it is. Teams have worked it out. Take the short option away. Make it hard. Carlton crumble. So it's a work in progress, Slick, to answer your question, mate. Coming up to the end now. We've got 2 questions left. And we've got Luigi. G'day to you. Should have played PeterV. Post selections this week. O'Brien should have played. We missed Owens up forward. And Debbie O'Connor, g'day to you, my love. Outplayed, outcoached yet again. Selection's ridiculous every effing week. A little bit harsh. I don't think we've been outplayed every week, as our win-loss suggests. But This was probably the only week I haven't liked selections. I didn't like the O'Brien out. I didn't like it at all. And I've got to be honest with that. I think against a team like Geelong, you want natural width, and Nunes and Hayes naturally gravitate towards the ball because of how they've been brought up. And I felt at times we became really stymied, where one improvement of O'Brien's game. And I like the fact we dropped him to set a standard, because his last 2 games weren't very crash hot since that goal game. But I didn't like it. I don't think it warranted it. PeterV, I wouldn't have risked him, to be honest, and I don't mind him. McGovern, I may have risked because but then again, watching VFL, he didn't play the full game. So if he could have played the full game, I would have risked him. And we've always, that's 2 weeks, we do miss him. And it was interesting because Durden played as if Owens was there this week, where last week he played as Owens and was at the fall of ball, which I found truly bizarre. I think they could have won that game, but I think they really, the first quarter showed you how you beat Geelong. Do you know what I mean? And I felt like how we played didn't reflect it. So maybe a little harsh, guys and girls. Thanks for your questions. I do think we probably made a risk this week, and it didn't quite work. And I'm all for it. Maybe not this stage of the season, though. Then we've got Setters. Good A, Ash, 24. Hey, Pommy, what sort of role is Setters playing in the VFL? He's listed on the team sheet as a winger, but he's racking up the pill like an inside me. Is he a chance to replace Nunes or Cottrell? Very good game from Will Setterfield this week. 40 touches. Just the 1 tackle. Played large parts of the wing, but rotated on the ball. It was a very... How would I describe it? It was a very Adam Shearer type role. Played out wide, and he has been predominantly doing the same, particularly around stoppages, comes onto the ball. About 40%, so very similar to Adam Shearer. 7 clearances this week, really did get involved in their total clearances. A lot of them round stoppages. So he could be a chance. If it would be for anyone, it would be for Nunes. More defensive side. It was a very VFL game, though. I'll warn you about that. A very VFL game. Mids are very deceptive in the VFL. So a lot of people are going to say Lockie O'Brien is crap. I can already see it now, because they'll look and they'll be like, oh, he had 16 touches. You actually watch that game, though, with the 18 touches. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't bad. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't bad. Do you know what I mean? About 8 score involvements for 10 goals. It's not bad. That's what a winger does. It was a decent game, though, and he would be a shout. He's done what he can do, but would I bring him in? Probably not. And finally, should we have tagged Guthrie? Hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it, Louise? It's a great question, though. Voss doesn't like tagging, and I kind of understand why. Right? I do understand why. Guthrie didn't... He had the 23 touches, the 5 clearances, the 5 tackles. He was a bit of a menace, wasn't he? Mark, Bill Clabs, he was good. 5 clearances, 5 tackles. Guthrie's dangerous. I think the team ethos, I understand how we play because it's all the bigger bodies predominantly. It doesn't really affect Carlton. Do you know what I mean? So I understand where Vossi's going with that, with the tagging thing. I do understand it. But having said that, I would like to see us have that option to float. Now, whether that's something that's maybe for Jack Silvani, got to remember he was tagging Cripper a couple of years ago and really helped Cripper out. Is that something that Vossi thinks about? Do you know what I mean? Just for stages. You could be stages in games. But I do like the team accountability. I do think that works, and in the long run it's good. But I do think sometimes Carlton maybe could just play someone on there to hinder a little bit. Thank you very much for the questions. That was awesome. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Thank you so much. Please like, please subscribe. We're smashing them out. Much love. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to do 2 videos in 2 days with a VFL wrap. And then we have the week ahead. So send any suggestions for something you'd like to see. Until then, Pom out.